The Chicago White Sox avoid going to arbitration with several players, which is a good thing because one of them is a player that they had an issue with last year around this time. White Sox were active at the start of the international signing period, bringing in the son of a 2005 White Sox legend. Also, with the Northsiders enjoying their fan convention. How are you feeling about Sox Fest being canceled for the third year in a row?
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen each and every day. We're free and available on all platforms. Follow us on Twitter at Locked On Sox. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just search Locked On White Sox. Hey, I'm your host, Nick Morawski, a lifelong die-hard Chicago White Sox fan, recording this podcast just blocks from the ballpark in beautiful Bridgeport. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. Really appreciate you letting me steal some of your time to talk off-season White Sox. Locked On White Sox is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We have some White Sox anniversaries to celebrate, maybe commiserate over. The White Sox were once again active during the international signing, coming to an alleged agreement with a top 50 prospect. And the Sox avoid the arbitration drama and come to terms with all players involved. And spring training inches closer. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. If you haven't noticed, we are in the off-season mode, down to 3 episodes a week instead of the traditional 5 episodes. We'll get back to that Monday through Friday schedule probably around mid-February when pitchers and catchers report to Glendale, Arizona. If some major news on the White Sox front happens, of course, the episode number can always be modified. Look for episodes this week, Wednesday, and Thursday. We had a call to action a couple weeks ago, maybe 2-3 weeks ago. And I just got to thank you so much for stepping up. We are less than 100 subscribers away on the YouTube channel from hitting that 1,000 mark. I was hoping we can get to 1,000 before spring training. I think we're going to do it. We are still trailing the Locked On Guardians, Locked On Tigers, and Locked On Twins. Would love if we could take over the AL Central by at least opening day, but really appreciate, I say it at the beginning of this podcast, and I do appreciate you giving your time to Locked On White Sox. There are so many other ways to consume White Sox content. There's a lot out there, and I appreciate the listens, the views, the comments, everything. Do appreciate that. Speaking of comments, we're going to do Mailbag Wednesdays once again. Going to try to run this up until the start of spring training. So if you've got questions, comments, wonderings, whatever it may be, you can get those questions over to lockedonsox@gmail.com. You can, send those comments in through YouTube if you want. If you want it to be a mailbag question, you can send them to me even through Twitter if you want. Go ahead, do that, and we'll get through some of those questions. Got some good ones already for Wednesday. I mentioned emergency podcast. We're at 3 episodes right now a week. But I would absolutely love to do an emergency episode. Please, White Sox, give me the opportunity to do an emergency episode. Let there be a trade. Finally, let it happen so I can sneak in another episode with some breaking news, even if it's on the weekend. I've been waiting for something big. We had the Benintendi thing. The Clevenger thing, I guess, way at the beginning. But it just feels like incomplete right now. This offseason, some things were addressed, but they haven't done nearly enough. And I would love to do an emergency episode about a big trade We are less than a month away from pitchers and catchers reporting. Wow. 40 days until the first spring training game. I believe it's against the San Diego Padres. 76 days until opening day. Again, Sox will be in Houston, unfortunately, and 81 days until the home opener. But who's counting, really? That home opener against the San Francisco Giants, I think that's a Tuesday, and it's a 3:10, 3:40. It's an afternoon start, which is different. They're usually like around noon. So it's nice to have a little bit later in the day, get some tailgating in. I'm already thinking about that kind of stuff. It's coming. You can't stop what's coming. It's happening. And with these cold, dreary, rainy January days, it's kind of exciting to think that less than a month away, and we're going to be into some Glendale, Arizona Camelback Ranch conversations. You had to notice. I noticed this stuff. I don't want to notice it, but it's a right across town. Every media outlet covers it as well for the most part. The Chicago Cubs had their fan convention, CubsCon, this past weekend, and I got to be honest, I'm still bitter that there's no Sox Fest this year for the third time in a row. Cubs were able to introduce a lot of their new players, and they feel like they've been signing somebody different every day, whether it's Swanson and Bellinger, and just recently Trey Mancini. You had Ricketts, you had the owner out there at the convention on the stage, talking and conversing, delivering a message, so to speak, to the fans. Whether they liked the message, did not like the message, how he's there, he's in front of the fans, he's out there public, as a presence. I've been to a lot of Sox Fest. I can never remember a Jerry Reinsdorf sighting, even after the Sox won the World Series, that Sox Fest January 2006. No sight of him. There was a huge panel with Kenny Williams and Ozzie Guillen, and he was nowhere to be found. It rubs me the wrong way, and I don't think things would ever change. I really don't believe Jerry Reinsdorf. He just doesn't care. I don't think he cares what fans think. It's not something he wants to do as a marketing, as a PR. I mean, maybe people have talked to him in the White Sox, development office, like, hey, just to save face, we've got, season ticket holders, we've got paying customers. Show up, make a statement, write something to the fans after the season that we had. Someone else will pen it. We'll just put your name at the end just to seem the optics that you care a little. Just something I noticed with everything that was happening with CubsCon. They're also, it looks like they're unveiling a new statue in front of Wrigley Field, and the White Sox have no shortage of statues on the concourse, and just got me wondering what the next White Sox statue could be. And I'm waiting for a Mark Burley statue. I think he would be the next one. He's had his number retired and all that. He deserves it. Wondering when they're going to get to another statue. There's a few others that their numbers have been retired, and they don't have a statue yet out there. So I think Burley would be the next one. And the Cubs, they're not the only one that have this team Hall of Fame. Have you noticed this? Other franchise have a team Hall of Fame. I've talked about it a little bit in previous episodes. I know the Kansas City Royals have that, and they have a brick and mortar like team Hall of Fame that you can visit out beyond the left field stands when you go to that Kauffman Stadium. Tons of memorabilia. I think right now you would have to view White Sox Hall of Fame type memorabilia if you are dining before sitting in the scout seats. In that little restaurant they have behind all these, behind glass, they've got some excellent stuff from all the different eras, but it'd be nice if it was open to everybody, right? And we had certain players maybe that were inducted into a White Sox Hall of Fame that not necessarily were worthy of a number being retired. I had a short list, but guys like Dick Allen, AJ Brzezinski, Wilbur Wood, Jack McDowell, Ron Karkovice, they spent some time and did some very memorable things in a White Sox uniform. Again, just something that I kind of picked up and noticed while the Northsiders were having their fun this past weekend. Still bitter that there was no Sox Fest. Like, you can read into why, and you don't have to really imagine too far of why. With the sell the team banners and the way the team disappointed, I just don't think they want to face fans, and I don't think they frankly care. And it's almost like you don't deserve this because of how you behave. Like, we were getting scolded as fans when, the Reds lost 100 games this past year, and they had a Reds Fest. There have been Sox Fests after some horrible, horrible years. And maybe you didn't have big, splashy sign. You had Benintendi, that was your big splash. But you had a new manager brought in with a brand new coaching staff. I would love to hear from Pedro Grifol in person, not just through, a press conference, but get there, be able to ask some questions, maybe to the coaching staff as well. Forget, that Sox Fest can be a money grab, which it is. And it's commercialized, and it's an excuse for, people to just peddle, their merchandise. It's a chance for fans to rub shoulders with like-minded people, in the dead of winter, to celebrate the team they love and spend most of their year with. 6, 7, 8 months out of the year, they spend their money on this team, on this franchise. And it would be nice to just go there, almost like, in a shareholder situation, and just hear from the team. Okay, what am I getting myself into this season? Sell me. Maybe you're on the fence on season tickets or tickets in general. And you hear from someone like Pedro Grifol and the plan that he has for this coming season. Big missed opportunity. Still a little bitter that there was no Sox Fest again, third year in a row. Speaking of just player development, things that happened with the guys that are on the team for now. Avoiding arbitration, busy time late last week. You had Lucas Giolito agreeing to a $10.4 million deal for the 2023 season on Friday. Chicago also agreed to terms with its 4 other arbitration-eligible players prior to the deadline to exchange salary figures. You have Dylan Cease will make $5.7 million in 2023. Lopez $3.6. Michael Kopech around $2 million, and Jose Ruiz just under $1 million. They all got their deals done. Like Giolito, Lopez was in the 3rd year of arbitration eligibility. Cease, Kopech, and Ruiz were all arbitration eligible for the first time. Now, last year, if you remember, in 2022, Lucas Giolito and the White Sox didn't work out a deal prior to the deadline for arbitration eligible players to exchange salary figures. However, Giolito didn't end up going to an arbitration hearing, as he eventually signed for $7.45 million last April 1st, 1 week before the start of the season. So last year, Giolito requested $7.5 million. The White Sox requested $7.3 million. That's a $200,000 difference, just 2.7% of the White Sox number. It turns out that in those negotiations that came before the filings, the sides had gotten to within $50,000 before the talks shut down. You might remember all the drama that happened last year around this time. Daryl Van Scoven from the Chicago Sun-Times posted Giolito's thoughts in a tweet last year. Lucas Giolito described going to arbitration with the White Sox as frustrating, very unfortunate, disheartening. Said it came down to $50,000 prior to filing. It's like, come on. Very upsetting. So it's nice to have, there be maybe no animosity heading into spring training, but it's not personal. It's business, right? That's what Jerry will probably say. Again, this is a walk year for Giolito. He's pitching for a contract, whether he admits it or not. The Sox have been no stranger to the international market as we look no further than Oscar Colas. I'm going to tell you how the White Sox made a splash this year. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Bet Online. BetOnline.net is your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to basketball. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. If you love sports podcasts, you can even find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting info. Head to the website today, or use your mobile device to learn more. Bet Online, where the game starts. So international signings, that was a big thing that happened just a few days ago. Sox always active, at least lately, in the international market. According to industry sources, the White Sox have agreed to a $700,000 deal with right-hander Luis Reyes, the number 41 prospect on the international top 50 prospects list. The White Sox, who had a base signing pool of $5.3 million, have not confirmed the agreement. The deal is pending a physical, which is no slam dunk. According to MLB.com contributor Jesse Sanchez, Reyes has a loose arm, a plus fastball, and other pitches on the way. He is projectable, having sprouted up to 6'3", while also adding muscle in recent years. The growth has translated to more power and athleticism. His experience playing against competition in the United States in tournaments and on the showcase circuit has also served him well. The result is a team who is poised, competitive, and does not get rattled. What's more, Reyes' mound presence and overall demeanor when he takes the ball is also noteworthy. The righty, who is trained by the Miami Miracles, has also been praised for his makeup and maturity on the mound. That was Jesse Sanchez with MLB.com. So here is a 2023 international signing tracker, all White Sox agreements. You've got Reyes out of the Dominican Republic, Abraham Nunez Jr., a shortstop out of the Dominican Republic for $700,000. Angelo Hernandez, a catcher out of Venezuela, $500,000. Rafael Alvarez, outfielder out of Cuba, $300,000. And then Juan Uribe Jr., shortstop out of the Dominican Republic, for $200,000. This is what Juan Uribe Sr. had to say about the signing. Several teams have shown interest in my son, but I would like him to sign with the White Sox because he was born and raised in Chicago, and I played for them for 5 seasons. Juan Uribe Sr. said, I love White Sox fans. Of course, Juan Uribe, a 2005 White Sox legend, one of the greatest catches in World Series history. He'll be always remembered. And interesting to have Juan Uribe Jr. kind of back into the fold. We'll see what happens. Depending on who you talk to when it comes to the farm system and international signings. I mean, there are some fans out there that are like, I'll see it when I believe it. Let me pay attention to the players that are actually on the team. Who's going to be there opening day in Houston? What team are we going to have trying to recapture the AL Central and maybe more? And there's others that really get into, what's coming up the pipeline? Where's the youth? What are we going to be developing? What can the Sox look forward to in several years? And there's other fans that are just burnt out. They're like, you know what? I stopped believing in prospects and youth a while ago when we had so many busts and they didn't know what they were doing. There's been a development problem. Talked a little bit about it last week on this podcast, and you are well aware as a White Sox fan, the Sox have struggled with that. So what are we going to be seeing, on the field come opening day? There's question marks out there. There still are, with less than a month to go before spring training. I think there's going to be some battles there. I mean, you got a loose lineup that could look something like, Anderson, Benintendi, Jimenez, Robert, Moncada, Vaughn, Grandal, maybe Colas, and Gonzalez. So Colas and Gonzalez are your question marks. Which second base, right field? have been the question marks since the beginning of the offseason and have been question marks for several seasons. I think that's what brings so much frustration when Sox fans say, I'm excited about spring training, but it's incomplete right now, and I think I was having this conversation with my co-host Pat Hester on the weekly White Sox podcast I do, Good Guys Talk Back, and it was a great conversation about, I think there's a hope that the franchise is banking on, several core players returning to accustomed levels, so that will overshadow the struggles that whatever second baseman wins the job has, or the right fielder, because Colas is going to struggle. Romy Gonzalez or Lenyn Sosa are going to struggle. A Gonzalez-Sosa battle could be, enjoyable and that could be fun, but that feels like a 2018, 2019 situation for the White Sox. Not when we're still in the competitive window and we really need to maximize as soon as possible, especially if we get health and productivity from some of our core guys. We're going to have question marks at second base still and right field, but that's where we are right now here in mid-January. Bartolo Colon and David Wells. How about those two names? They pitched for the Chicago White Sox many years ago. I'm going to tell you why their time on the South Side was so brief but impactful. More on that in a moment. Today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. Looking for a delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories? Then you got to try a Built Bar. We just got through the holidays, and I know my goal is to eat a little healthier this year. If you're like me, where you want to eat healthier but you don't want to compromise taste, then you have got to try a Built Bar. With Built, healthy is actually tasty. They're so delicious you won't think they're good for you. Perfect for your New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bars so good? They are covered in 100% real chocolate. That is right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and coconut almond. Not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and a whopping 17 grams of protein. And now you don't need to wait around to get a box in the mail. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. Now you can get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club. Head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk up to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puffs. Folks, the puffs are absolutely outstanding. I'm telling you. Treat yourself to these. And if you're close to a Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box of our hit flavors, brownie batter and churro. So some anniversaries to talk about, throughout this offseason. I've been trying to highlight different moments in White Sox history when there was a signing or where there was a trade or an acquisition. And we just missed just recently a guy that we're thinking about keeping in our thoughts and prayers, Liam Hendriks. At this time, back in 2021, Hendriks signed a $54 million deal over as few as 4 years to be the closer for the White Sox. The fourth year of the deal had an option year worth $15 million. If the White Sox were to decline the option, a $15 million buyout would be paid in 10 equal installments between 2024 and 2033. That was it. I remember that when that contract went down, there was a very interesting, odd contract. 2003, 20 years ago, around this time, the White Sox acquired starter Bartolo Colon as part of a 3-way deal with the Montreal Expos and New York Yankees. Yankees sent Orlando El Duque Hernandez to the White Sox for Eddie Caldanario and Antonio Ozuna. The White Sox then dealt Hernandez to the Expos along with Rocky Biddle, Jeff Leafer, how about those names, and cash for Colon and Jorge Nunez. Colon performed very well in 2003, but much like what we have with Giolito in 2023 here this season, it was Colon's walk year, and to nobody's surprise, the Sox did not retain his services. Bartolo Colon signed a 4-year, $50 million deal with the Angels. He won the Cy Young in 2005, but things ended up just fine for the Southsiders that year. And then go all the way back to 2001. And if you don't remember this, if you weren't around for this, if this was foggy to you, go back and find the articles on all this drama that went down. Speaking of Sox pitchers that were not around very long, David Wells, who had a great year in 2000, David Wells was acquired by the White Sox around this time in 2001. He won 5 games in 16 starts that year, suffering from back issues all year long, and then throwing Frank Thomas under the bus in a radio interview about an injury that Thomas was suffering that year. Needless to say, that was his only year on the South Side. He went back to the Yankees in 2002 and won 19 games and made 31 starts. Folks, thank you so very much for making this podcast part of your daily routine. You can find the Locked On White Sox podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. We are on Twitter at Locked On Sox. You can find me on Twitter at Nick_GGTB. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and pass it along to other White Sox fans in your life. I do appreciate that. Get your questions in for Mailbag Wednesday. LockedOnSox@gmail.com. Thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen. Now make your second listen Locked On MLB Prospects. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Coming up on the next episode, I'll continue to examine offseason scenarios as we count down to spring training in Glendale, Arizona. Really appreciate you making time for the Locked On White Sox podcast. I'm Nick Morawski, and until next time, go Sox.